Hello and welcome to lesson 5 on brain development, and it's worth saying that this lesson 5 is a key study, and it is Hughes's policeman doll study, and we need to know how significant this is to Piaget. Hughes's, well, actually, before we get going, can I just point out, please, that all this information is available in written form on the platform that is Show My Homework, as is the hyperlink to this YouTube clip. It's all on Show My Homework, so I'd urge you to go to that. More specifically, this information can be found on page, if I can just get there, I'll give that to you, is page 56 to 57, and I would like you to make key notes based upon this narrative you're about to receive and the information on page 56 and 57. So, each unit, as you well know, has 2 key studies, and Hughes's policeman doll study is a key study within this unit on brain development. So the aim of Hughes in his 1978 policeman doll study was this: it's to see if children can see if things can see from another person's perspective or point of view at an earlier age than what Piaget's theory suggested. Okay, so essentially Hughes was looking at the notion of egocentricity, and he was exploring to see whether actually Piaget was wrong to say that actually that egocentricity doesn't fade really until the concrete operational stage. Hughes believes actually that children at a much younger age do have that capacity, but let's see how he got there. So the study design, initially it was a laboratory study, so it was a lab study, and already when you think of a lab, alarm bells in some senses need to be ringing. Not that this is necessarily bad, because lab studies do fail to give ecological validity. That those two things almost go hand in hand. If it's lab, it fails to deliver ecological validity. But if it's lab, of course, what it does mean is that all extraneous variables can be discounted, because you, the psychologists, are in control of absolutely every single variable. So as soon as you mention lab, you've got a plus in control of extraneous variables, you've got a negative in that possibly that's ecological validity. Well, anyway, this study design, as I say, it's a lab study in which there was some control of possible extraneous variables. All procedures were standardized to ensure the study could be replicated easily. Again, which is another positive with a lab study, is that they can be replicated at a drop of a hat. 30 children between the ages of 3.5 and 5 years took part. So it's 3.5 to 5 and there's 30. So we're looking at the sample size. Is it massive? Can it be applied universally? And I would say a sample of 30, I think you would agree, is relatively small. So already we're starting to unpick a few evaluative points and limitations with the study. The method was this: that the children were shown a model with 2 intersecting walls, so kind of cross like so, that formed a cross. A policeman doll was placed on the model, and the child was asked to hide a boy doll so that the policeman doll could not see him. So it was rather straightforward. The policeman was then placed in different positions on the model, and the child simply was asked to hide the boy each time. This was to ensure that the child understood the task. If the child made mistakes, they were told and were allowed to try again. This was rarely necessary, however, because the children seemed to understand the task, as it was pretty straightforward in nature. I'm sure you would agree. Then the actual experiment began. Another policeman doll was introduced to this model, and the child was asked to hide the boy doll once again, so that neither policeman doll could see the boy doll. This was repeated 3 times, so that a different section of the grid was left as the only hiding place each time. And actually 90% of the time, the child was actually able to identify the part of the grid where the boy doll could not be seen by the two policeman dolls. So the results were quite significant. The conclusion that Hughes subsequently drew was that children aged between 3.5 and 5 years can see things from another person's point of view, and therefore Piaget was wrong to say that children were still egocentric up until the age of 7. Okay, so is there any support for Hughes's findings? Well, another psychologist designed a version of Three Mountains task that used children's television characters. They found that 3 and 4-year-old children could in actual fact give the correct answer when the television characters were used. So Hughes also gave children a simpler version of the Three Mountains experiment. Do you remember that Piaget delivered? He found many 3 and 4-year-olds could then give the correct answer. So instead of using a random kind of picture that Piaget used in doll, they actually used a familiar character, and the child was able to more easily put themselves into the shoes of that particular character. So in terms of evaluation, we've already been there, in that the policeman study lacks ecological validity. It involves, for example, hiding from policemen, which is not a situation that young children are likely to have experienced. It involves hiding from a parent or another child, for children might have perhaps it might be more, I suppose, relevant to a situation that a child would commonly find themselves in. We've looked at the sample size. We've looked at the fact that it lacks ecological validity, but we've also looked at the fact that it has very few extraneous variables that the psychologist is not in control of. So over to you. Could you decide? Could you write down, please, which position do you find more compelling? Do you think Hughes is right to say that actually children lose egocentricity around about the age of 3.5 to 5? Or do you think Piaget was right and say, no, it doesn't fade, and that when I say it doesn't fade, egocentricity does not fade until you hit 7? Good luck.